This is Entrepreneur Authorities. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your startup, or just getting started, get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to take your next big leap. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today I'm joined by Charles Sims, also known as the Hurricane CTO. Charles is a tech evangelist, investor, and keynote speaker with more than 15 years of experience at the intersection of technology, sports, and entertainment. We're going to dive into his entrepreneurial journey, how to communicate tech with business leaders, and what he learned from the legendary former Microsoft CEO, Steve Ballmer. Charles, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Joe.
You're very welcome. And so I want to do this conversation sort of like Quentin Tarantino style and start at the end and work our way back to the beginning. Because when you have a cool nickname as Hurricane CTO, I can't wait to talk about that. So if you don't mind, people know you as Hurricane CTO. Would you mind? And I understand that there is your methodology is built around this brand identity, but where does it come from, Charles?
So originally, Hurricane CTO came from my wife, who would make fun of me for, as I'm either doing projects around the house or whatever I may be doing, I'm the hurricane of, I just leave craziness wherever I go. But then the name stuck when I was at the LA Clippers, where there would be situations where it's an emergency or everything is blowing up. The server room is flooding. The network is completely down. Something's broken right before the game time. And I'm really, really good in the moment, in the chaos of kind of guiding, delegating, getting everybody doing what we need to do to get back up. And then there might be cables and cords and a mess of whatever it's doing, but we're camera ready, we're moving, and I'm walking on to the next thing. So I leave the hurricane where it is. As I've matured and grown up in my career, now it's the concept of like really trying to bring bring calm to that chaos. The chaos of whether it's the entrepreneurial environment, whether it's the enterprise environment, trying to be the natural translator between the really strong personalities that might be opposing, but be able to do it in an innovative, empathetic way.
Nice. All right, cool. Thank you for explaining that. And we're going to get into the framework of Hurricane CTO as we close out this conversation. But I want to go back and talk about sort of your entrepreneurial journey. And Charles, I've been doing business media for about 5 years. Before that, I was in entertainment. But one of the things that's always been difficult for me to talk about is that entrepreneurial mindset. As an immigrant's kid, like I've always felt like entrepreneurs are crazy. And the fact that I grew up as a Gen Xer, Charles, as you know, for Gen Xers, the word entrepreneur kind of has like a loaded meaning. If you told someone you're an entrepreneur in 1985, they say, "Oh, so you're unemployed." We fast forwarded 30 years, and entrepreneur has a little more heavy weight to it. But your entrepreneurial journey started in paintball, of all things. So I need to ask you, is that gene in your system, or was it something you fell in love with? Because again, when I speak to entrepreneurs, and I say like even the psychopaths are the serial entrepreneurs, the ones who keep doing it over and over again. But in terms of your spirit, the DNA of it, was it there, or did you find it?
Oh, it was definitely there. I mean, I got in trouble in middle school for buying candy from Costco and then selling it in the schoolyard. No, without not too much markup, but just enough to make in. Then with the paintball, it was a funny just coincidence learning that my friends and I in Arizona loved paintball. We were playing paintball every week, and one of the most expensive things is the paintballs themselves. And when I was at a paintball store, I overheard the manager talking to their distributor, got the name of the distributor, reached out to see how do I actually just cut out the middleman and get it directly. And you need to have a wholesale license, and you need to just send us a copy of your LLC, business license, and this, then the other. Fast forward about an hour, I figured out, I can file for an LLC, I can do this. And then now I was this sole distributor for all my friends to get their paintball gear at 40, 50, 60% off of what it would have been at the store for no real skin off my back whatsoever. So that then kicked off the drive. From there, I did a bunch of other sports through some wholesalers. When I was at University of Colorado, built a hookah rental business all around, trying to. Hookah was really, really big at that point. Found a distributor that would give you direct from like Egypt for a tenth of the price of what it is everywhere else. Then that turned into a business deal that, so going back to serial entrepreneur, turned into a business deal where we had a car audio parts shop because we got about 40 grand worth of car audio parts from a company that was closing down for $500. And so like, it's just this weird, I feel like I fall backwards into these opportunities to where we're at now, but solving so many just different problems in the same like context and be able to switch between contexts very, very quickly. I love that. I love the building side of it.
That's so cool. Awesome, awesome. And it's funny too because over the last half decade, I've spoken to a ton of technologists, folks in whether it run companies, started companies. And it's, I think you're the first who has a minor in theater, and
Yes.
with a theater background there. And one of the things, Charles, I've learned, especially making the pivot from entertainment to business, is that I feel like artists have to be entrepreneurs. And
Mm-hmm.
much like a startup, when you're an artist, whether actor, singer, even painting, no one is going to care more about your work than yourself. Just like a
Yeah.
startup. It's the same kind of mindset you have to embrace. And then what that entails, as you know, Charles, is the different skills you need to do. So not only are you just a guitar player, you're the guitar player who knows how to make, a PowerPoint presentation or make a sign, using Adobe. So tell me about how, this sort of intersection of art and business intertwines for you.
So originally, it was me having a passion for theater and wanting to not necessarily be an actor, but wanted to be in the creator space and doing a couple acting classes at CU, and then realizing very quickly I am not a talented actor whatsoever. But what I was really, really good at was empowering those creatives. I understood how to do the budgets, the timelines, the schedules, the like getting things together. And so I fell in love with the business of creative, the business of theater. And my minor at CU led me to go to NYU, where I studied both business and fine arts, all around producing, like the business of productions and the entertainment industry. And what I realized, similar to the world that's in entrepreneurship, if every single one of those shows is a business. Every single one of those movies, like it has a opportunity for profit, for loss. There's liabilities, there's opportunity, like there's all these different things that you normally would do in business, and most creatives don't like that. Like that makes their skin crawl to think about having to do taxes or where to get the employment agreements and things like that. That comes naturally to me. So like now that those two worlds collided, where I know I'm not going to be an actor ever, but I do love being around the creatives and empowering them.
So, Charles, one of the things I've realized since interviewing and speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs is that y'all love your acronyms. I mean, when I started doing this, I was Googling like what's an OKR and all these things you guys love. And so you've built your career on the acronym CTO. Well, you were selling hookahs or selling selling car parts or selling paintball. Did you know what a chief technical officer does, or how did you make that jump to that?
So it's an interesting story where I came out here and was doing um, uh, the entertainment side of things, and then realized after a couple of really bad productions, I was getting married. I just can't do this anymore. And something that popped up was a management consultant for technology. I didn't have a background in technology. I didn't know. I didn't have a computer science degree, but I knew enough to impress the recruiter. Then met with the president, and I ended up getting this job for a managed service consulting firm all around IT and technology. And I quickly learned you just got to be two steps ahead of everybody around you. And my skill set of being able to talk to your CEO or your CFO or your COO in non-technical terms, in business terms, was actually really, really valuable. So all I had to do was learn the technology. Fast forward 6, 7 years, I now had a really broad understanding of how technology works, where the business value is, and those pieces, and then kept growing that skill set. Where I didn't want to be the expert, I didn't want to be the deepest engineer. I want to be able to explain the business side, the value of these different pieces, because then I truly bought into the value of technology as a massive difference maker within business.
Tony Robbins once told me that um, the imposter syndrome is BS. Like he actually said the words, the adult words, and he says imposter syndrome is simply just fear. And so
Mhm.
I'm not gonna pose the imposter syndrome question to you, but was there any fear in those early days of, as you were cutting your teeth for those first 5 or 6 years of like, what if somebody finds out I don't know Jack about IT services? What was that like?
That was I have that everywhere in my life where I always feel like whatever opportunity that comes up, there's going to be somebody who ends up calling them that comes from my past way back when and said, "Oh, he didn't pay for his lunch this day" or something. But in tech, most of the people I interacted with were non-technical, right? Because all the customers were usually non-technical customers. The other engineers and the folks that were technical, I I was able to have as much of a personal relationship with them, and more so on a like a human connection. And so that turned into my imposter syndrome drove me to learn very quickly, but I wasn't quizzed every single day. It wasn't something where I felt like I was failing the test. And then I quickly realized, oh, there's not that many people in this space that truly know that much about technology. They overcomplicate everything. They make everything overly dramatic. Of if you don't do this, everything's going to blow up. If you don't get back, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when I became more confident and quickly learned, no, I just got to bring the human aspect to it, but know the BS, know the right ways of doing things, and really lead the vision.
That's cool. There is this cringy phrase, and people still use it. It's fake it till make it, and I've always not been a fan of that because you can't really fake it. But was there instances where you had to be performative in a way of like, hey, by the way, I do know what those acronyms mean. Were there days like that where you felt like I got to show off? I've got to find a way to make people. I mean, they know I'm doing my job, but I also want to perform that I know how I'm doing my job.
So I fell in love every time that we bring in outside consultants. So whether it is doing due diligence on a new M&A deal or when we were building out the stadium with the Clippers, whatever it may be, because that was my time to shine, where they'd be providing analysis or trying to give us advice, and I could really, whether be 4 or 5 steps ahead of them, or be overly helpful and show them absolutely everything they want, and still know much more detail or have more of a vision. Because most consultants, they're in there for a few months and then they're out. They're moving on to the next thing, and that's where my executives would really, I, I think, take a shine to me, because it's being able to show off where appropriate rather than trying to be like, hey, look at me, I'm amazing, every other opportunity. So
And so your career has been filled with a couple of really cool stops along the way. UTA and the Clippers you mentioned. Um, when you're dealing with high level organizations like that, is it one of the things where you almost have to go in and to share when I started going from entertainment to business, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, what do I know about business? Or I don't have an MBA. I don't know what it's like to start. So what am I going to ask these people? And the one thing I realized pretty quickly was at the end of the day, it's all the same shit. Like it's humans trying to tell their story. So when you're making this, I think to steal a basketball reference, Pat Riley called it the innocent climb. When you're working your way up and working with these large organizations, is there something to the fact of I belong here,
mhm.
or how do you like grapple with that? Because it's really impressive, like on paper, but you lived it. So were there moments where you're like, holy shit, what am I gonna do here? This is the big time.
Yeah, it's there's a strategy I learned when I was in consulting, where one of the things that you hate is when you bring in an expert and they say, tell me what your problems are and I can fix all of them. Just tell me your problems. It's like, no, you're the like, I need you. I don't want to spend the amount of time that it takes to take you through everything. I need you just to be self-reliant and be able to drive it. When I go into the enterprise, I had the same approach of, I didn't want to just ask everybody like, give me all the answers to the quiz, give me all the problems. It was always having a vision, always having something that they believed in, the confidence of this is the right way to do it. And if we compare us to any other team in the league or any other agency in the space, we are leaps and bounds ahead of the next folks. And so I was lucky at Clippers having a owner like Steve Ballmer, who ex-CEO of Microsoft, loved technology and believed in the difference that it can bring. But at the same time, there had to be business reasons for what we're doing. We're not just throwing money to throw it around. And that's where that visionary and learning how to sell internally, learning how to get buy-in. So when we're going into budgets, every other C-level is on or in with me to pitch whatever I'm doing, rather than me begging for something or threatening everything's going to blow up if we don't have this cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's very much the performative, like you mentioned, art of getting your vision, getting your narrative across without talking over or underneath people.
Yeah, that's great. If you don't mind, ask about Steve Ballmer, because now that you consult and work with a lot of CEOs, what's a differentiator when you see someone like this, Steve Ballmer, who is probably the creme de la creme of the last 50 years of American business? Is there something that when you reflect on your time with him that you're like, this guy has this one thing that I don't see in a lot of the people I work with every day? Was there one thing that you remember that you're like, man, that's impressive?
One thing that I would definitely say was just always blew my mind was his ability to remember people in conversations and have very like he never made you feel like you can't talk to him. He never made you feel like he is the multi billionaire that he is. And while I've met many, whether it's celebrities or basketball players, there's going to be those people that they make you feel like you shouldn't be a part of that conversation. Steve was always able to, not, I mean, he remembered every single one of my interns' names that were only there for 3 or 4 months, and remember would call back to conversations that we had 2-3 years ago. And so like that level of care and passion for other people is not something you see not only at the CEO level, which is hard, but you start to see it once those VPs hit. They don't have the same mindset of like everybody is a connection, everybody is a human here. Some people are just tools, and I loved his approach where it was much more personal and humane.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. If you don't mind indulging me with, because you kind of alluded to some of the hurricanes that you dealt with the Clippers. Was there one like game day crisis that stands out where it's it's your go-to like holiday story when you're talking to somebody about something that was a big old hurricane that you had to fix?
So the first project that we actually had, so because I was originally with the consulting firm that was engaged by the Clippers, and the first time the first project I came in, I actually wasn't part of them. I was part of an outside folk, but the previous head of technology left on a Thursday when they were supposed to move into a brand new building 2 streets away on Monday, and nothing had been moved. None of the network was up. This was back when, because good old Steve, everything was going to be Skype for Business for phones, and none of the phones were provisioned. There was no provisioning automation back then. And that weekend, we there's a couple of interesting stories in there, but one of my favorite was we couldn't figure out all of the networking there's no documentation from the previous server room. So instead of trying to recreate it, we unplugged everything and we rolled that server rack all the way across two streets and spun it back up. And right before we got to the entrance of the new office building where there's these train tracks, I just had the inkling of there's gonna be something bad if we don't take the really heavy UPS batteries out of the bottom. And sure enough, since we took them out, we got stuck on the train tracks, but it was just light enough that we could pop it over. And so one of my favorite stories is this mental image of myself and my friend at the time rolling a server rack down the busy street in downtown LA.
Wow. Now that definitely sounds like a hurricane right there. That's like an
Yeah.
F5 hurricane right there. That's pretty cool. All right. So you've taken all this experience working with major brands, major companies, and became your own brand in Hurricane CTO, offering your services and helping folks. So I want to dig in, like we mentioned, the framework of the hurricane methodology. And there's something you write about and talk about a lot is binary troubleshooting in action. Could you unpeel that a little bit for me?
Yeah. So usually when and it's something that has always come naturally to me, is when you're trying to solve a problem, you don't want to make decisions or changes that are so small that you're not really sure if that was what fixed it. And so the way I like to explain it is, say uh, something's not turning on. Is it, can we put a bunch more power into it, or can we go the completely opposite way and shut everything else down? Or if we're trying to correct some sort of mechanism, it's not about trying to just do little things because you think you have the solution. Figure out the 50% and just keep breaking down. It's either this or this, it's this or this, it's this or this, and then you can very quickly solve extremely complex problems because you now understand the mechanisms and levers that are changing within that. So that I call it binary because it's the idea of, you take the biggest one side. If that doesn't work, go the biggest swing the other side, and then slowly bring it up.
Nice, nice. One of the things that that people probably just from watching or listening to this will realize is like you're very much the anti CTO, whereas you're all about being able to speak in a relatable fashion to to leaders, to boards, and all that. What's the golden rule that you have when it comes to that? I mean, it seems like for you it's pretty natural, but maybe sometimes you sort of have to hit the reset button and be like, oh, hold on, let me step back. I'm being too technical here. What's a great way to, communicate to executives when it comes to super maybe technical stuff without either, and this is kind of like the threading the needle, oversimplifying it and undersimplifying it, because you could sometimes be insulting and be like, so you plug it into this, you turn on the button there. So there's a happy medium you have to broach, and obviously it sounds like you know where the happy medium lives. But tell me about some rules and maybe guidelines for folks who may have trouble with that.
Similar to acting, you have to listen. Like, you can know the script all day and know all of your lines, but if you're just reciting them and you're not in the scene, you're not actually listening to the scene partner with you, it looks terrible because it doesn't sound like you're having a real conversation. In the same way, when you're talking to either technical experts who want to go deeper, want to dive into it, or non-technical experts where they need it in their translated in their language, is actively listening, having a conversation that you enjoy and that's fun. I mean, not fun, but that is making sense to continue the conversation. So if you're talking to a CEO and you're talking way over their head, and unfortunately, IT people tend to use that as their advantage, because then they can just keep talking and talking and talking and just push everything through. But in reality, you're losing trust every time you do that, and every time you talk over. Once you get to the level of being able to explain just enough, then they trust that you have the rest of the technical chops to do it. That's why they hired you. That's why you are their CTO or CIO or whatever it may be. But it still takes that active listening. So you can't go into any conversation saying, this is what I'm going to do, this is all I'm going to talk about, I'm going to beat them down until they say yes. You're playing improv. You're yes anding with your fellow executives.
No, I know all about that. Yeah, yeah, yes, and yeah, sure. Heighten and
Yep.
explore. I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
all those. I know all those. I know those,
No,
Charles.
but no. Yes, and
Yeah, yes, and one of the things that I feel, I don't know if a lot of leaders now, I think now leaders are kind of overcompensating when it comes to technology. I think maybe coming up, Charles, you probably saw a little bit of like, I don't know, like pushback of like, do we really need that? Now I almost feel like like one of my running jokes, Charles, is one of the things we do very well as a society is we overcorrect. So we went from being like not anti-tech, but almost like hands-offish. And now we're like AI, metaverse, quantum. Yes, 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 yes to everything. So and you're a tech evangelist. How do you toe that line when it comes to working with folks who are like, yes, give me all of that, and then you're like, whoa, you don't need all of that. tell me about that sort of transition in terms of like the last 20 years where people were sort of skeptical of tech and now they're almost too into tech.
Yeah, well, I think we could kind of think through why did that change happen? And if you think about what everybody, every executive loves sales because it's very easy to know, are they being successful or are they not? Are they deserve all the praise in the world, and a lot of operations will just get more and more salespeople, and that's how you make more money, just more and more and more and more and more, because it actually translated to the bottom line, or translated to the top line. It was very easy to say, this is how much value that is. IT was hard because it was historically thought similar to plumbing, to electrical. It's a cost. It's not creating value. Every new freaking application that these guys bring in is one more thing that makes my life that much more difficult. As we've seen in the AI world, just slapping AI will make value to whatever product you might be selling, or the massive efficiencies that are going to be gained by everybody using Cursor, even though they're an accountant who have no idea how to really utilize an ID or anything like that. But it's very much it makes sense without somebody explaining it to the executives today. And it's similar to sales as it was before. So where I toe that line is trying to always have that business case. I like to talk about there's four different levers that come for any decision you should be making and think about. You have the cost, you have the asset or value created, you have the opportunity, and then you have the liability. Opportunity and liabilities are theoretical. Doing this one project or implementing this one type of software, the opportunity, it's going to 5x our revenue. Great. The liability is it could ruin the morale, and we're going to lose a bunch of employees. Then you have the cost of, that's easy. It's going to cost this much to implement. And you have the value of, this is the actual value that it creates immediately. And so as long as you're always in the net positive between those four levers, it makes sense. Don't overspend to get Salesforce, this, that, and the other AI when you have one sales guy. Don't go and get I've seen the note takers abound where there's 18 note takers in a meeting, and that stuff adds up very quickly. And SaaS has made it almost impossible to manage all of these little apps that you realize you don't need, you don't use, and having more of a unified strategy for it is much more worthwhile than just everybody has as an expense card and swipes that, get on to the next one.
That's funny. A friend of mine runs a Salesforce third-party company helping teams implement it, and he's been a tech founder for years. And one of his biggest pet peeves, Charles, is, and you might have heard this like a few years ago when people said, if you're a business, you are also a technology business. And he's like,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
if you're a butcher, you're not a technology business, you're a butcher. Or, obviously that's really a dumbed down way of it, but like it drove him crazy that every business is a technology business. And I would always argue, I'm like, yes, I get it, but you still have to have technology running through that business no matter what. So tell me about that. I mean, does that idiom drive you crazy as well? And in terms of like, how do you separate the two of being a business, but also a business with technology that runs through it?
I will say I always hate the sayings that are just like easy off the cuff and kind of they sound good, but they don't necessarily really get anything, mean anything. And when every business is now a technology business, I agree. Every business today uses technology, and they can be vastly improved and be able to 10x their productivity with the right technology. But that doesn't mean that they need it. It doesn't necessarily change. A butcher doesn't need their entire. I don't know if there's an AI component to butchery or whatever. But they do need a POS, right? So that's technology. Do they need a super fancy one? Probably not. Do they need anything more than QuickBooks? Probably not. But they're still having to use these pieces. Then I go into I think every business should have a product mindset where you should be productizing your special sauce. So if you're a butcher, it's not trying to create a butcher's app. It's how do you create the framework to have the most amount of create the most amount of value out of whatever skill set that you're doing. So how do you optimize your supply chain? How do you optimize the talent, and how you're minimizing waste as you're keep going back to butchery, but as you're cutting up the meat, like, productize it, standardize it. No, don't get away from everything being just kind of off the cuff, figuring it out as you're going. That's great in the ideation phase. You always have to be ready to productize, to standardize processes, services, whatever it may be. Even if it's not a product, you can still productize it.
Wow. Of all the business, did you maybe have a butcher shop along the way? Maybe that's why you're able to speak so fluently about butchery.
As somebody who was a vegetarian for the first 15 years of his life, I'm surprised I even knew those many words.
Well done, Charles. All right, so I want to wrap things up by talking about the fact that, we've mentioned your resume. Very impressive. You work for companies, but you've now branched off and become your own sort of entity, your own, again, keeping that entrepreneur spirit living within you. Why was that so important at this point in your life to continue that sort of entrepreneurial journey that started with paintball as a little kid? Is it just because you couldn't shake it? Is it Godfather Part 3? Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in. What is it about entrepreneurship that keeps you going?
I love building, and I love that in those initial parts of how quickly you can really create value in a space and a talent set that not many people have, of going 0 to 60. And one of the things I learned why I never want to really go back to enterprise is the saying of, it's like turning a battleship in a bathtub. It was so true. I could have the most amazing vision, but I still needed so much buy-in. There's so much work around just to get the stuff pushed into place. Where I love the startup space, and when we're advising startups, we can do and make so much change so quickly that I mean, 10x is not a unrealistic change opportunity. And so Scaffold Studio, which is the group that we spun up, the manifesto that I had for it is 80% of almost all of the business that's repeatable. And so that's productized. You can productize how you incorporate, what tool sets you should be using, like all of those really, really basic things that we take for granted until we're in the mud and we're like, should I use QuickBooks or should I use Zoho? Should I use this? Should I use, and those decisions I love the architecture of those. I love the business architecture, and doing it multiple times, working with those who might be the most brilliant person in the world, but they can't operationalize the execution, or they can't figure out how to sell it or pitch it in the right way. And so that's why I really, really love what I'm doing now, and shifted from big, massive enterprises into now these hopefully 1-2 person $1 trillion businesses in AI.
Sounds awesome. Folks want to connect with you, find out more about you and your company. Charles, where should they go?
If you want to talk to us, scaffoldstudio.com. If you want to find me on my socials, Charles Sims on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, as well as TikTok. You won't see me too much on TikTok, but.
Oh, really? No dances or challenges from you, Charles?
I tried, and it just doesn't work out with the nerdy guy physique. So
awesome, Charles. Thanks so much for the time. I'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks, Joe.
And that'll do it for this episode. If you're an entrepreneur ready to grow your industry recognition as an author and entrepreneur.com contributor, go to authorities.entrepreneur.com.